Mr. Boddy was lucky to survive his car crash, although he was sure that there was more than luck involved. When he came back from hospital, he told us that everything had changed. A new life was about to begin for him and for Arlington Hall. He was going to give up everything to lead the simple life, or so he would have us believe. And no one else had been offered the choice between the way things were and the sweetness and light that Mr. Boddy seemed so suddenly to have found. And someone didn't believe in it, did they? Because poor Mr. Boddy went to his reward a bit sooner than he expected.
A live bullet. Fingerprints, Colonel Mustard. Wrench. Fingerprints, Mrs. White and Professor Plum.
How much more time do you want, Professor? Mr. Boddy will be gone by Monday, and then the auctioneers will be in.
Maybe they won't notice.
Well, you noticed, and you're no professional. By the way, you've been making quite a nice little living out of me and Mr. Green, haven't you? Until Mr. Boddy saw the light. It must be very inconvenient for you.
I didn't take that much.
Well, it won't look like that when Mr. Green starts to talk, will it?
He won't!
Oh, yes, he will. He can't face going to jail. He'll name you as the ringleader, the mastermind.
He can't! I only made a fraction of what he made on those antiques.
And then I shall have to look out for my own salvation, shan't I? Come to think of it, blaming you might be the right solution for all of us.
No. There has to be another way.
Then kill Mr. Green. He's too dangerous to live.
No, can't help you with that one. Not really my thing, lead pipes. However, if I do see one or hear of any sightings, you'll be the first to know. I was in the kitchen with Mrs. White during the drain clearing saga. The thing was apparently wanted by Plum. He was outside in the yard, and Mrs. White had to take it out to him. I saw it, but that's about as much as I can remember. I went shortly after that. For the last 2 years, I've been borrowing Boddy's antiques and selling them to a dealer in London. It was too easy, really. I just forged his signature. The last thing I expected was for Boddy to give away every penny he had and join a monastery. I still can't believe it. Mrs. White was involved too, you know, and Plum. In fact, I tried to persuade Plum to do something positive. It was about time he earned his money. But he refused. I was desperate to find some way of stopping Boddy ruining everything. Fortunately for me, someone else got to Boddy first.
Well, I suppose plumbers use them, don't they? But that's not what you're after, is it? No, I haven't seen anything that fits that bill at all. Sorry. Wrench? No, definitely not. I haven't seen one since my Bentley blew up on the Stratford Road, and I don't want to see another one either. The wrench, that is. Boddy lent me £5,000 to set up a business. Struck me that if I could just double it, then, well, you know the story. I've always been a bit of a gambler, and I thought that Boddy had found me out. And with the brothers about to descend on us and possibly demand repayment of the loan, I was at my wits' end. Nothing seemed to be what I would consider normal. And there is one thing which makes me very suspicious. However well we all get on with Mrs. White, she is still a member of the household, not a guest. Mrs. White and Green seem to have a most unorthodox relationship. She seems to have some kind of hold over Green, and that I find very odd. There's bound to be something I've forgotten, but I can't tell you any more at the moment.
A letter and receipt from antique dealer to Mr. Boddy, thanking him for his excellent custom over recent months. Fingerprints Mr. Boddy and Mrs. Peacock. Knife hidden. Fingerprints Miss Scarlett, Mrs. Peacock, and Mr. Boddy. Blood on knife. Tests show blood to be Mr. Boddy's.
Yes. Yes, of course you'll get your money, man. Now, are you going to take my business or not? Right. Right. I want £50 each way on Royal Scarab. Yeah, right.
How much are you in hock for now?
The lot. Everything.
You can't pay back Uncle Boddy's loan.
It never got any further than a bookmaker.
You and I share a similar problem, don't we, Colonel? Uncle Boddy isn't signing this place, my inheritance, over to Brother Jerome until Monday. Time enough for a man of action to find a solution, I would have thought.
It's all a game to him, isn't it?
Yes, but two can play these games, Colonel. And I have an idea for a little gambit of our own.
A small key under the table. The spare key to the safe. Fingerprints Mrs. White. Electric wires taped to handle of safe door. Fingerprints Mrs. White and Colonel Mustard.
Where's the key? Ah, there. Don't touch it!
What on earth was that? Did you see a flash?
My God, it's Mrs. White.
She's unconscious.
Will she be all right?
Don't, for God's sake, don't touch anything. Somebody sent for a doctor. I think she's been electrocuted.
Lead pipe. Fingerprints, Mrs. White. A rug rolled up in back of cupboard. Blood on the rug. Tests show blood to be Mr. Boddy's.
There's no point in asking Mr. Boddy anything. That's one leopard who hasn't changed his spots. Whatever Brother Jerome thinks.
Do you think he knows about the antiques?
Oh, what does it matter? Someone's going to notice that half the antiques in this place are missing. You've seen to that. And they're going to blame you. Because I'm just a little old lady who's been led astray by a wicked con man. So, you better think of something.
You're not getting out of this.
Oh, shut up, will you? By the time I've finished, nobody is going to believe a word you've said. And I'm not going to prison. Not for you, Mr. Boddy, or anyone else. And that is a promise.
What on earth am I supposed to do?
Well, you can take these to the dining room for a start. And then if you want to sleep easy in your bed at night, you'd better think of something, hadn't you?
I saw them over dinner in the dining room. Beyond that, I can't help you. I'm afraid candlesticks come a long way down on my list of priorities at the moment. No, I'm afraid I can't help you. I gather Plum and Mrs. White were trying to unblock a drain in the yard. You really ought to ask them. Oh, for goodness sake, whatever next? No, I have not seen any rope. Furthermore, I don't expect to see any rope either now or at any time in the foreseeable future. Does that satisfy you? No, I have no recollection of seeing anything like that. I don't think I was near the kitchen all weekend, if that's where they keep such things. Boddy surprised me in the study, going through his desk. I'd broken into it with the knife to see if I could find anything about his handing over the house to Brother Jerome. When I saw him, something snapped and I attacked him with the knife. Of course he took it from me. Oh, it was all so stupid. Boddy absolutely insisted that I accept his loan for the money I needed to put a new roof on the Grange, but then he withdrew his promise after the builders had already started. If I didn't pay, I would lose my home. I don't know what his game was, and I don't suppose we'll ever know now. There were definitely some very strange things happening. I happened to be passing in the dining room and saw the Colonel. He seemed to be dismantling the standard lamp and kept looking about as if he feared that he might be being watched. What it all adds up to is your concern, not mine.
A pen under the chair. It belongs to Mr. Green. Bloodstains. Tests show blood to be Professor Plum's. A bullet embedded in the wall.
Jet, go on!
Get away from me. Take it away!
Mrs. White is going to talk. And when she does, we're both in the dock. So unless you want to explain all this to the judge... No.
I'm not going to do it! Look!
I'll make sure your little blackmail racket comes out into the open. And my friends from London will be coming to see you, Professor. But if I'm in jail, there'd be nothing I could do to stop them, would there? They don't like blackmailers.
What would they do to me?
I think you'd be better off if the police did lock you up. There. Good boy. Go and deal with Boddy. It's your only chance.
No, take it away. Take it away. I can't do it. I can't do it.
No, I can't help you. I haven't seen Uncle Boddy's gun for ages. He practices in the billiard room, sometimes. He's got a kind of a shooting gallery in there, although I don't remember seeing him use it this weekend. I expect you mean the silver candlesticks in the dining room. Do you know, I was in the dining room this evening, and I honestly can't remember whether they were there or not. What I can tell you is that I saw Mr. Green with the candlesticks in the corridor earlier on. Lead pipe? I really do think that this is rather silly. Perhaps you could explain to me why I should know anything about lead pipes. It's hardly likely that I would have seen one in the house, is it? Ah, the rope. I suppose I have to tell you what actually happened. I just hope you believe me. You see, I wanted to stop Uncle Boddy. I had to stop him, but I didn't know what to do. I took the rope from the hall cupboard and went to see Colonel Mustard with it in the lounge. I had this silly idea of trying to frighten Uncle Boddy with it. The Colonel thought it was ridiculous, and he took the rope off me. He went off with it, and I didn't see it again. I didn't really want to hurt Uncle Boddy. I do know that Mrs. White and the Professor were doing some ghastly job trying to clear a blocked drain or something. Professor Plum kept asking where the tools were kept. Really, I was in no position to offer advice. I don't think I've ever seen a wrench in my life. Yes, I did see it. Uncle Boddy and Mrs. Peacock were in the study, and that's where I saw the knife. I waited until they'd gone, and then I took it. It's no use asking me what I was going to do with it. I just don't know. I lost my nerve and hid the knife in the lounge. I don't know what I was thinking of. I had always thought my inheritance from Uncle Boddy was secure, but when he called us all into the library and told us that he was throwing it all away, I couldn't believe he would do that to me. I'm still not sure that it wasn't some clever ploy of Uncle's to frighten everybody, but he was certainly very convincing. He definitely worried Colonel Mustard, who had his own problems, which I'm sure he will tell you about, but he and I agreed to set a trap for Uncle Boddy. Unfortunately, it all went badly wrong. Poor Mrs. White. She could have been killed.
Candlestick. Fingerprints Mr. Green. A rug missing from the floor. A rug missing. A glass and stain on the floor. Tests show stain to be wine. Fingerprints on glass, Mrs. Peacock.
If you want to drink while Rome burns, that's fine, but count me out.
Oh, don't be so childish. If we don't work together, we don't stand a chance. And you know it.
You really do have a nerve. Who introduced Uncle Boddy to this Brother Jerome and his henchmen?
I can assure you I didn't do it to cut my own throat, even though that is exactly what happened.
You were always creeping around him, trying to get your hands on him and his money. You can sneer at me as much as you like, but I'm losing Arlington Hall and my inheritance.
You are losing everything because you borrowed from loan sharks against your inheritance. Oh, yes, didn't you know your uncle knew that? My dear, I feel exactly the same way about you. But whether you like it or not, unless we pull together, we'll both go down. Now, is that what you want?
We did dine by candlelight. I distinctly remember wondering how fiercely Boddy would burn in the fires below as I sat there watching the wax running down onto the table. Uncharitable, perhaps, but there you are. I don't remember seeing the candlesticks after that. I sent Mrs. White into the house for a hammer. She came back with a piece of lead pipe. One wonders what I would have got if I'd have asked for a screwdriver. A vodka and orange, no doubt. I was very polite and said, "No, thank you. That won't do." I don't know what Mrs. White did with it after that. I can't help you at all with that. Isn't that a rather unlikely item to find around a country house? Yes, I spent an unpleasant hour with it, when I allowed myself to be talked into unblocking one of Boddy's neglected drains. Mrs. White found it for me. Later on, she gave it to me again, but for another purpose. I left it in the hall. Knife? Boddy's knife? No, I have not seen it. I take it you'll agree that I have more than enough on my plate this weekend without knives entering into the equation. Yes, I saw the gun. Green nearly killed me with it in the ballroom. He wanted me to take it, but I wouldn't. He kept pushing it at me, and suddenly it went off. My hand was grazed. He panicked and ran off, so I took the gun and went. I don't know why I took the thing. I left it behind some books on one of the shelves in the library.
Green tried to get me to kill Boddy with his own gun. He was threatening me, saying that his pals from London would be on to me. If he wanted Boddy dead, he should have done it himself. I'm not much of a man of action. Anyway, I hid the gun where nobody would be likely to find it. It wasn't the only weapon around, you know. I was very surprised to see Miss Scarlett's behavior in the lounge. I could clearly see her putting a thoroughly evil-looking knife in the log basket.
Candlestick. No fingerprints. Candlestick recently cleaned.
Why are you doing it, man? And don't talk to me about Brother Jerome and seeing the light. That won't wash.
Perhaps I did underestimate people's need for me here.
Well, what about the £5,000 that you lent me to set up my own company? What's going to happen to that? How do I know that Brother Jerome won't want his money back, eh?
No true friend need fear my intentions. Only those who are gambling that I'm a complete fool.
What do you mean, gambling?
Someone else's big gamble that didn't come off. Eh, Colonel?
A hollowed-out book. Nothing in the book. Gun hidden behind books. Fingerprints Mr. Green, Professor Plum, and Colonel Mustard. Gun fired recently. No bullets.
Today is the first day of my new life. A life which will affect you, my dear friends. After my crash, as you know, I was cared for by Brother Jerome and the monks of the Order of Silence. If you will forgive a poor joke, I was on the road to Damascus, not Arlington, when I was hit by that car. And now, nothing can be the same again. On Monday morning at 11:30, I will be received into that order as a novice by Brother Jerome himself, and I will turn over all my worldly goods to them.
For goodness sakes, man.
You are my friends, my dear friends, and I will be sure that you are taken care of as you deserve. I know I will be misunderstood, but my first action as a novice will be to assume the vow of silence.
Why are you doing this to me? Why are you ruining my life?
When dinner was finished, I took them down to the kitchen to give them a clean before the wax went hard. It's a lot easier if you do that. Mr. Green was there with me, so I gave them to him to put back in the dining room when I'd finished. Yes, I saw a piece of lead pipe when I was in the hall with the professor. Later on, when he wanted a hammer, I remembered the pipe and I thought maybe that would do. The hammer had disappeared completely. The professor said the pipe was too long or too short or something. Anyway, he didn't want it, so I took it back to the kitchen. I left it on the windowsill until I had a minute to put it back in the hall cupboard. I forgot about it after that. There should be some in the cupboard in the hall, although now I think of it, I didn't see any when I was looking in the cupboard earlier. I'm sure there was some. Yes, I got it for Professor Plum. He wanted it to do something with the outside drain. Later, when we were in the hall, I suggested he use it to kill Mr. Green, but I only said it to stop him going on. Yes, of course I've seen the knife, in the study, but I can't say when. I know it wasn't this weekend, though. I haven't had a chance to go in there yet. I saw someone in the library, and I'm not saying who, pulling some books out of the bookcase. I thought I mean, the person was trying to find a book to read, but then that person put something in at the back of the bookcase. It looked like a gun to me. If I hadn't been wearing rubber boots to help Professor Plum unblock the drains, I wouldn't be here now. You see, I thought that Mr. Boddy had received a letter from the antique dealers in London, the ones that Mr. Green had been using. I took the key to the safe from the hollowed-out book in the library. I wanted to get that letter back. Anyway, somebody had wired up the safe to the mains. Only the rubber boots saved me. I don't know who would have done such a thing. You might like to ask Mrs. Peacock if she saw anything. She was certainly there when I came round. I told Mr. Green that he had to sort Mr. Boddy out, but whether he did or not, I couldn't say. He was with me for part of the time you want to know about, but not all of it. I'd been in the kitchen with Miss Scarlett. She seemed awfully concerned about my accident. When she left, I went to the library. Mr. Green and Professor Plum were there too. We needed to decide what we were going to do when the monks arrived on Monday. I'm sure you know by now that we'd taken a few antiques. Mr. Green put me up to it. I thought that if Professor Plum killed Mr. Green, we would be able to put all the blame on him. I'm sorry. That's about it for the present, I'm afraid.
Blood on floor. Tests show blood to be Mr. Boddy's. Rope. A drawer forced. No fingerprints. A drawer.
Who's there? Come on, let Thank you.
The devil looks after his own, doesn't he, Boddy?
Would you kindly tell me what you were trying to do?
If I couldn't find anything in here to stop you, I was going to kill you.
Is there anything you people won't do for money?
Don't you patronize me, Boddy. If you don't need your money anymore, then leave it to those of us who have to live in the real world.
However much I left you, you'd want more. Greed feeds on itself.
You promised me that loan. You went back on your word. And now the difference is, you'll go into a monastery while I'll lose my home.
You'll thank me for this one day, my dear. Believe me. Now get out of here before I forget my good nature and call the police.
I'm afraid I got mixed up in a rather silly scheme with Miss Scarlett. I attached some wires from the standard lamp in the dining room to the door of the safe. I didn't want to kill the old boy, just to shock him into the real world, if you'll pardon the expression. You could imagine how I felt when I heard about Mrs. White nearly being electrocuted. Absolute madness, the whole thing. There was a point, though, at which I contemplated more direct action. I actually took Boddy's gun and some bullets. Can't tell you where it is now, though. It's certainly not where I left it. I'm sure I'll remember other interesting facts, but I've nothing to add right now. Oh, it's been a long time since I sat down to a romantic candlelit dinner. Oh, it didn't happen this weekend either. Boddy sorted that. No, I can't say I noticed the candlesticks. No, not really. There's bound to be something I've forgotten, but I can't tell you any more at the moment.
I'm afraid I can't think of anything else to tell you at the moment.
The candlesticks? Yes, Mrs. White was cleaning them in the kitchen. When she finished, she shoved them into my hands and told me to put them back in the dining room. I was on my way there when I saw mustard in the corridor, so I diverted into the conservatory. I left them there. I didn't see them after that.
I saw them over dinner in the dining room. Beyond that, I can't help you. I'm afraid candlesticks come a long way down on my list of priorities at the moment. I presume you have heard by now that Mrs. White was nearly killed. She was electrocuted in the dining room. I believe she was trying to open the safe, although I'm sure without Boddy's knowledge. Professor Plum was first on the scene, and I was right behind him. I didn't see anybody else in the room, but I did hear footsteps running away. It sounded like a woman, but there was only one woman unaccounted for, and it is unlikely but not impossible that she murdered Boddy. During the time in question, I was in the study with Colonel Mustard, but I was rather ungracious, and he left. I went along to the dining room. Miss Scarlett followed me in. She seemed perfectly normal, and we remained there until we heard about this dreadful business. I'm afraid I can't think of anything else to tell you at the moment.
Mrs. Peacock was in a terrible state about Uncle's conversion. He had treated her badly, but I'd always believed she was after his money. Anyway, they had what I suppose you would call a fight in the study. She had Uncle's knife. Goodness knows what she was going to do with it. I confess that I was eavesdropping from the entrance to the secret passage. Anyway, that made me think that I should take the knife. I don't know exactly why I took it, because I got rid of it pretty quickly. But I did hear Mrs. Peacock say that she would do anything to stop Boddy. I'm sorry, that's about it for the present, I'm afraid. I expect you mean...
You know, Mrs. White has surprised me recently. She isn't at all the person I thought she was. She actually told me to kill Mr. Green. Said he was the root of all our troubles, and with him gone, we would have nothing else to worry about. She even suggested a weapon to me. Obviously, somebody else had a better idea. In view of the fact that I have been wrong about other people, I hesitate to tell you this, but when I was with Mrs. White and Mr. Green in the library, Mrs. White was worried about being overheard, so I checked the corridor. I was rather surprised to see the Colonel heading in the general direction of the kitchen, with a bulky object under his arm. I'm sorry I can't be more specific.
You think the murder took place in the conservatory? But who? Which? And this is your accusation? You think the murderer was Colonel Mustard in the conservatory with the candlestick? Well done. You've got everything right. You've solved the murder mystery. Now, let's go through it stage by stage and see what happened.
Mr. Boddy had enemies before his conversion, but now everybody had a good reason for wanting him dead. Only the Colonel felt that he had the training to carry off the perfect murder. Colonel Mustard was certain that once Brother Jerome got his hands on Mr. Boddy's estate, he would call in the Colonel's debt to Mr. Boddy. If that happened, he was finished, because he'd lost that money on a horse. When the Colonel saw Mr. Green going into the conservatory with a pair of candlesticks, heavy candlesticks, candlesticks that you could do a lot of damage with, he did wonder if Mr. Green had a plan in mind. But when he left the study later that evening, he saw Mr. Boddy heading for the conservatory, and he followed him. He soon realized that talking to Mr. Boddy was pointless. Then he saw the candlesticks again, where Mr. Green had left them. After he'd done his worst, the Colonel rode up the rug, grabbed the candlestick, and rushed into the billiard room. He cleaned the candlestick and left it there, but there was nowhere to hide the rug. So he put it under his arm and took it to the kitchen, where he hid it in the back of the cupboard. Unfortunately for him, Professor Plum had seen him.
And there you have it. That's how Mr. Boddy met his fate. Why not come back again and see if you can solve the next murder at Arlington Hall? Hmm?